So the international break is finally over and Manchester United are back in Premier League action this weekend with a very tricky away game against Liverpool. But I'm here today to tell you that Manchester United can win this match and genuinely have a pretty good opportunity of doing so. Now that might sound weird to say, because Liverpool have started the season relatively well. Of course, they went the first 5 games unbeaten and were cruising at the top of the table. Currently, they sit in second, but have just had a bit of a crisis week just before the international break, losing 3 matches in a row. And there's an argument that over the course of the season, they haven't really been the better team for 90 minutes in a match just yet. So that should give Manchester United hope. And when we look at things from a tactical point of view, there are clear ways in which Manchester United can hurt this Liverpool side. So that is going to be the focus for today's video. Yes, of course, there is the defensive side of the game that we will have to consider as well. Liverpool will feel that they can hurt United too. But for today, it's all about Manchester United getting on the ball and hurting this Liverpool team, and more importantly, how they can do it. So the first thing that I want to talk about is Manchester United trying to play the ball out from the back and Liverpool trying to put United under pressure. Because Liverpool do not press in the same way that they once did under Jurgen Klopp. They were once associated with gegenpressing. These days it's quite different. Liverpool are a little bit more passive and a little bit less organised, which gives United an opportunity. Now we should always remember that United are far from specialists in the first phase themselves, but I think United have a moment here where we can play out from the back. So the first thing we need to do is look at the Manchester United shape, and we know what that's going to look like. We're going to see the 2 wider centre-backs, whoever they may be, splitting either side of the goalkeeper. De Ligt will almost go into a midfield role, whilst another midfielder drops in alongside him. This could be Ugarte, it could be Casemiro, it could be Bruno Fernandes, it could be Kobbie Mainoo. The other central midfielder will move a little bit higher, and the shape will look something like this for United. Now, what Liverpool tend to do is press in more of a 4-2-2-2 shape. Was that the right amount of twos? I think it was. But what we're going to see is Isak, of course, the striker, could be Ekitike, goes into the front line and plays as a striker. The player that is going to join him as the front 2, though, is not Szoboszlai, like we would see in a normal system. Instead, it is Mohamed Salah, coming from the right-hand side and coming inside into this position here. And then the left winger and the 10 are going to back up the press. And this is the way that Liverpool typically look to press. So the question is, where can Manchester United hurt Liverpool? Because initially, in this position here, it sort of looks man-to-man, right? But there's a few things that we need to consider. First of all, United have the extra player because we have a goalkeeper here, whereas Liverpool don't. So technically it is 5 versus 4, and there are moments where we can play out from the back with bounce passes round the corner to the 2 wider centre-backs. The other thing that we may be able to do, if we can get Ugarte or De Ligt on the ball facing this way, United potentially have an overload in midfield, which is quite rare because it's normally the other way around. But should the likes of Mbeumo, Bruno Fernandes and Mason Mount drop into these positions, there is actually the opportunity for a 3 versus 2 in the middle of the park. So if United are able to play through this first bit of pressure here, there is an opportunity to get the ball into this 3 versus 2 situation where United have the extra player. The other area where we could hurt Liverpool is in the wide zones. Now this is perhaps a little bit easier because you don't have to force the ball through the middle of the pitch. Instead, you can go to someone like Luke Shaw and his left foot can play the ball down the line. Now the reason why United can have success here is because Liverpool are a little bit passive and the fullback is unsure of what to do. Should he go really tight on Patrick Dorgu and potentially leave room in behind for someone like Mason Mount? Or should he drop off a little bit deeper onto Mason Mount, but now Dorgu has all the time in the world? Of course, the same can happen on the other side as well. We have Ahmad and Mbeumo. This is where Manchester United can hurt Liverpool. Now, of course, like I said, United aren't exactly specialists in the first phase, so this might be a little bit easier said than done. Chances are, at times in a match, United will resort to playing a more direct game, so perhaps we'll pull players short to draw Liverpool up the pitch, but Le Mans will send the ball more direct. And this could be a weapon. Normally, when we talk about sending the ball direct, we are talking about long down the middle to the striker against the centre-backs. But against Van Dijk and Konate, that could be quite difficult. Šeško is an excellent physical presence, but against 2, that's rather tough. But how about if we look in the wider zones towards the Liverpool fullbacks? Kirkesh, Bradley, it could be Frimpong, are not the best aerial fullbacks that you are ever going to see, and it's made even more difficult when you're 2 versus 1. So let's say Le Mans has the ball here and he sends the ball along to the left-hand side. Once again, we can ask those questions of the fullbacks. Should Bradley come out and challenge for the header here? but risk the flick on in behind for Mason Mount to run onto? Or should he sit a little bit deeper, but now we could play direct to Dorgu, who's got time to get the ball down, and United can move the ball forward. And we know once United are in the opposition half and facing forward, we do have players that can hurt teams. Now, because Liverpool's press has actually been quite poor this season in most matches, there are a lot of spells where they have to sit a little bit deeper. Again, not something that we would have associated with Jurgen Klopp just a couple of years ago. But now Liverpool sometimes have to play in more of a block, and specifically a mid-block. Not quite a low block, they're not parking the bus, but they're trying to block the middle of the pitch. How do Liverpool look to do this? Well, once again, they will often move to a front two, but this time it will now be Szoboszlai going alongside Isak, creating almost a 4-2-2. So we've got the back four here for Liverpool, and this is important. They will always play with a back four. We never see the centre-backs connecting into midfield, and the full-backs never play high. They always want one extra player back here. So if United have 3, Liverpool will have 4 in these defensive positions. What we will then see is probably McAllister and Gravenberch in midfield, 2 wide players playing here, and then, of course, the front 2. The problem for Liverpool is this year they just lack intensity. Perhaps that's because the personnel are different, perhaps the instructions are different, perhaps Slot doesn't want them to be aggressive, or maybe he does, but the players are unsure on their roles currently. There is a disconnect in this Liverpool team. They are not as aggressive, they are not as cohesive in their pressing moments. And this, of course, is going to give United the potential to move the ball forward. The question is where? Where are the weaknesses? Well, let's look down here initially. Mohamed Salah, one of the best players to ever play in the Premier League, is a Premier League weakness, weirdly enough, because defensively, he just doesn't do much defensive work. And even when he is in position to defend, he's slow. You know, he doesn't want to run and chase. He's saving his energy for attacking moments. So Luke Shaw carrying down the left-hand side is certainly a weapon that we could use, particularly if we start with the ball on the far side. So let's say Ahmad has the ball in this position here, and Liverpool sort of get drawn over like this. There is every opportunity for United to sort of cycle the ball around the back, and then Salah lacks the intensity to really connect into the pressing moment. So Shaw could have room to either carry the ball forward quite comfortably himself, or he could fizz the ball forward down the line, and once again we are looking at that 2 versus 1 situation that we can see in the wide area. Now, overloading the wide area could also allow United to access the middle of the pitch, which may not initially make sense, so let me just explain that. If you are, as a team, moving your wing-backs forward, Manchester United pushing Ahmad or Dalot forward down the right-hand side, Dorgu comes flying down the left, what you eventually do is you start to pin the opposition backline. The fullback for Liverpool doesn't want to jump out and be aggressive. Instead, he wants to defend a little bit deeper to cover the Manchester United wingback. This is where Liverpool can start to get a bit of a problem and start to get a bit of a disconnect, because they've got their initial sort of pressing front four up here, they've got their deep back four over here, and then they've got 2 central midfielders, sort of in the middle of the park, a little bit lost, a little bit stuck, both very, very good footballers, but neither of them defensive destroyers, and neither of them entirely certain of what their defensive role is. Are they meant to be connected with the high 4 or with the deep 4? Are they meant to be covering out wide or in the middle? They get a little bit stuck. And once again, this is where United could be looking at overloads, particularly if Mason Mount or Cunha or maybe even Bruno Fernandes starts in the left 10, because that would give United a player who naturally wants to drop a little bit deeper into midfield. And again, if we are talking about overloads, this is where Manchester United can be dangerous. We saw this from Chelsea against Liverpool. We covered it on the second channel, AJ Talks Tactics. There will be a link in the description. One of the lessons we learned in the last game week was the way that Chelsea exploited this particular moment. Because as one of the midfielders for Chelsea picked the ball up, one of the Liverpool midfielders was drawn out, and that meant that there was a free man, Caicedo, on that occasion, and he could carry the ball forward. There is every chance for United to do the same, because Liverpool's mid-block is passive and kind of poor. Now, despite all of those negatives, Liverpool still sits second in the table, and that is because they have got some amazing players from an attacking point of view. The likes of Van Dijk and Konate really build from the back, the fullbacks like to get forward, loads of creative central midfielders who are giving a lot of positional freedom, and then some absolute killers in the final third, particularly Salah, but also Isak once he gets firing. However, this could actually be when Liverpool are at their most vulnerable. This is actually when you can hurt them the most, because they want to get forward, they want to be expressive, and they want to attack. And typically they have sort of 2 ways of doing that. One way is going to be by building with more of a back three. So Kirkos, the left back, will tuck in just a little bit deeper, and Van Dijk and Konate will both shift across. This, of course, is going to allow someone like the right back to move forward. That could be overlapping or underlapping. It's not too important for this particular comment. And what we will see is one of the Liverpool midfielders, let's say perhaps McAllister, drops into a solo pivot role in the middle of the pitch in this position here. However, should Liverpool lose possession, this structure is actually potentially quite weak. And the reason for that is because, let's say Konate is trying to find Gravenberch in this role here. As he feeds that pass, if Bruno Fernandes can intercept, you have the United players facing forward. And the only player really facing up against them is McAllister. Now, I've said already, McAllister's a good footballer, but I also said he's not exactly a defensive destroyer. He's not someone who can cover a lot of ground. Realistically, out of possession, he's someone that likes to kick people and commit a lot of fouls, something which United might be able to exploit, by the way. Keep an eye out for yellow cards for McAllister. But Manchester United, in these moments, can now pounce forward, particularly with ball carriers. Liverpool have been very weak this season against players that can carry the ball. Mason Mount, Bryan Mbeumo, Kobbie Mainoo if he was to play or come on later on. Same for Cunha as well if he starts or comes on from the bench. Players that can carry the ball. And the reason why they're so vulnerable to this is because the back three want to retreat and protect their goal naturally. So McAllister is by himself trying to stop 2 or 3 ball carriers. That's just not possible. He fails to delay them, which is where you can quickly, very quickly, gain a lot of territory because McAllister can't slow the attack down by himself, and this is why Liverpool are conceding a lot of goals in transition. Now, there is also another reason why Liverpool can be quite vulnerable in these transition moments, and that's because they're trying to evolve. They're trying to become an even better attacking team. And Slot on the ball is a manager that likes to attack. We'll often see both fullbacks flying forward into the final third. Lots of forwards committed high up the pitch. But also, and this is the sort of evolution side of things, a lot of rotations in midfield. When you look at Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch, you can't really pin any of them down to one position. None of them are quite 10s, they're not quite 6s, they're all central midfielders who want to roam about and pick up the ball in different parts of the pitch, and they are given the license to do that. So sometimes Gravenberch will be over here, and then in the next moment he's going to be over here. It's the same for Szoboszlai, it's the same for McAllister. The problem is, when you're giving players a lot of freedom in these positions, what if you lose the ball? If you lose the ball, Van Dijk in this position, or even Bradley up here in the right half space, if all of these central midfielders for Liverpool are given freedom to express themselves and find pockets of space, your rest defence structure is in absolute tatters. The second that Liverpool are overturning possession in these high areas, there is absolutely no protection for the two centre-backs. Not helped by the fact that Konate has had quite a poor start to the season, but he's simply not being protected. There's not enough players in front of him looking after him. And this is where Manchester United, if they find their passes and are technically good on the ball, could rip Liverpool to shreds. So yes, those are 3 of the key things that Manchester United need to look at if they want to hurt Liverpool this weekend. Now, one thing we should remember is that Liverpool are still a good side. I've just sat here and ripped them to shreds for 10 minutes, but they're a good football team, they're second in the league for a reason, and they have some of the very best players on the planet, some of the best young talents just waiting to sort of pop and really kick on and have their moment. Liverpool are very capable of hurting United as well. Not something that we'll cover today, but there will be content out there on YouTube that you can go and watch. Liverpool will carry a threat. Liverpool will also feel that they can win this football match. But today was all about looking at the positives for United, and there are clearly areas that United can exploit in that Liverpool system. But for United, there's a couple of important things. Physically, they have to turn up. They have to battle with the intensity and, in a combative manner, minimum, match Liverpool. They have to be able to match Liverpool. The other thing they need to do is emotionally and mentally be switched on. Be ready for a very difficult atmosphere, but also be ready for setbacks. There will be moments where United have to suffer or may go a goal down. The important thing is to keep your head. And I don't just mean don't rush into silly tackles, but I mean look after the ball and make good decisions. That will be key for United. And then the other thing is to technically execute. Tactically, the moments will be there for United to pounce forward. Then the players have to deliver. The ball carrying needs to be good, the final pass needs to be good, and United need to take their chances. Do all of those things, and United genuinely have a very good opportunity of winning this match. Fail to do any of those basics, though, and Liverpool will feel that they can run away with this. It's going to be a really interesting game, which could go literally either way. I want to hear your predictions in the comments down below. Not just your scoreline, but also your goal scorers and the sort of theme of the match. What are you expecting to see? Let me know in the comments down below. But apart from that, we are now finished for today. So thank you guys very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.